Mark sat on the front porch, staring at the fading sunset. The warm hues of orange and pink stretched across the sky, casting a gentle glow over the quiet suburban neighborhood. His fingers absently drummed against the wooden armrest of his chair. Inside the house, he could hear Linda moving about in the kitchen, the soft clinking of dishes, a familiar sound that had accompanied their evenings for the past 30 years. 30 years. It felt like a lifetime, and in some ways it was. They had built a home together, raised 2 children, and navigated the storms and sunshine of marriage. But now, as they both neared their 50s, something felt different. Not broken, not bad, just different. Linda emerged onto the porch with 2 cups of tea, handing one to Mark before settling into the chair beside him. They sipped in silence for a moment, listening to the distant chirping of crickets. "I was thinking about the last time we sat here like this," Linda finally said, her voice soft. Mark glanced at her. "Yeah." She nodded, smiling wistfully. "I think it was before Emma left for college. We used to sit here every night, talking about everything and nothing. Lately it feels like we just exist side by side." Mark exhaled slowly. He had noticed it too. They still loved each other, of course, but the energy between them had changed. The children were grown. Work was no longer the all-consuming force it once was, and their days had settled into predictable routines. "Maybe we got too comfortable," Mark admitted. "We don't fight, we don't struggle, but we don't really talk anymore either." Linda tilted her head. "Do you miss it? The way things used to be?" Mark hesitated, then nodded. "I do. I miss the excitement. The way we'd laugh over the silliest things. The way we used to make plans instead of just going through the motions." Linda sighed, setting her cup down. "I've been thinking about that a lot lately." She hesitated before continuing. "I don't want us to just grow old together. I want us to live together. You know what I mean?" Mark did. He had seen couples who merely coexisted, their conversations reduced to discussions about grocery lists and household repairs. He didn't want that for them. "So," he said after a moment, "how do we fix it?" Linda grinned. "That's the thing. I don't think it's about fixing anything. It's about changing things up, bringing back the adventure." Mark raised an eyebrow. "Are you saying we need an adventure?" "Why not?" she challenged. "When was the last time we did something spontaneous, something exciting, something new?" He thought about it. He couldn't remember. "Okay," he said, intrigued. "What do you have in mind?" Over the next few weeks, Mark and Linda made a conscious effort to break free from their routine. It started small. Morning walks in the park instead of sitting in front of the television, cooking together rather than eating in separate spaces. Then, Linda suggested a weekend getaway, just the 2 of them. They packed their bags and drove to a cozy cabin by the lake, a place they had once visited in their early years of marriage. The fresh air, the absence of daily distractions, and the shared experience of doing something different brought them closer in ways they hadn't realized they needed. One evening, as they sat by the fireplace, Mark reached for Linda's hand. "I forgot how much I loved this," he murmured. Linda leaned into him. "Me too." The weekend was just the beginning. They started making time for date nights again, trying new hobbies, and even learning how to dance. Something Linda had always wanted, but Mark had never been interested in before. But more than anything, they talked, really talked, about their fears, their hopes, their dreams for the next chapter of their lives. And through it all, they rediscovered the spark that had once drawn them together. One night, back on their front porch, Linda looked at Mark with a mischievous smile. "I have another idea," Mark chuckled. "Should I be worried?" "No," she said, squeezing his hand. "Just excited. Let's make a list. A bucket list for the next 10 years. Things we've always wanted to do but never made time for." Mark considered it, then nodded. "All right, let's do it." And so, with a shared sense of purpose, they began writing down their dreams. Some were simple: learn a new language, take a cooking class. Others were more daring: travel to Italy, go skydiving. But no matter what was on the list, the real adventure wasn't in the activities themselves. It was in doing them together. And as Mark looked at Linda, the woman he had loved for over 3 decades, he realized something important. They weren't just growing old together. They were growing together. One evening, Linda surprised Mark with tickets to a local theater play. "I know it's not your thing," she said, "but I thought we could try something different." Mark, though hesitant, agreed. As they sat in the dimly lit theater, he found himself unexpectedly captivated by the performance. When the final curtain fell, he turned to Linda and grinned. "All right, you win. That was actually fun." Inspired, they began saying yes to more experiences they might have dismissed before. Art classes, a weekend pottery retreat, even an impromptu road trip with no set destination. Each adventure reminded them that excitement didn't have to come from grand gestures. Sometimes, it was simply about being open to the unknown. One afternoon, Mark received a phone call that left him unsettled. His company was offering early retirement. The news sent him into a spiral of doubt. Was he ready to step away from a career he had built for decades? What would he do with all that free time? Linda sensed his unease. Instead of offering empty reassurances, she sat with him in the uncertainty. "Maybe this is an opportunity," she suggested. "A chance to do something new, something just for you." Together they explored different possibilities: mentorship programs, volunteer work, even the idea of starting a small business. Mark realized that life wasn't winding down. It was simply shifting into a new phase. And with Linda by his side, he wasn't afraid to embrace it. One evening after dinner, Linda put on an old song that had played at their wedding. "Dance with me," she said, holding out her hand. Mark chuckled. "Right here? In the kitchen?" "Yes," she insisted. With a sigh, he pulled her into his arms, and soon they were swaying to the familiar tune. As they moved together, laughter bubbling between them, something stirred in Mark. Something he hadn't felt in years. From that night on, dancing became their little tradition. Whether it was slow dancing under the stars, or a silly impromptu jig while brushing their teeth, it became a reminder that romance wasn't about grand gestures, but about choosing each other, again and again, in the smallest moments. One morning, as they sat with their coffee, Linda turned to Mark and asked, "What do you think our life will look like in 10 years?" Mark thought for a moment. "I used to think it would be about slowing down, but now, I think it's about leaning in, trying new things, meeting new people, creating new memories." Linda smiled. "Exactly. I don't want us to be the couple that only talks about the past. I want us to be the couple that's still making plans for the future." So they did. They booked a trip to a country they had never been to. They adopted a rescue dog that brought chaos and laughter into their home. They signed up for a cooking class together, despite Mark's disastrous skills in the kitchen. And through it all, they proved to themselves and to each other that love wasn't just about holding on to what was. It was about always reaching for what could be.